This session, this is a shorter one. It's around just some of our terminology here at Flinders, colleges, topics and assignments. For those who weren't in the previous session, my name is Jane Habner from the Student Learning Support Service. And for those of you who were in the previous session, you can look around the room and realise that I'm not as charming as I thought I was. Also, people have genuine college-based orientation sessions to go to. I welcome everyone who's joining us online, and for those who weren't in the previous session, either in person or online, I acknowledge that we are on unceded Kaurna land, and I pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land. So what we're going to do just in this little bit of time is to unpack just some of the terminology that is used specifically here at Flinders around colleges, courses or degrees and topics, some of the different language around the learning activities that you'll do, the difference between sitting in a lecture theatre like this and sitting in a tutorial room, for example. Then we're going to have a quick talk about assessments, including where to find them on Flow, and also just the grading structure at Flinders. We are a smaller group, so if you do have any questions at any stage, just pop up your hand. I can repeat them for those online and we can answer them as we go. Now, a time to have joined. At Flinders, all of you will be a student in at least one, if not more than one, of our colleges. These are our sort of large academic faculties, the old words that we used to use, our colleges here at Flinders. Until last year, we had 6 colleges. And a slight restructure. Everything remains the same except for, the naming and whatnot. But we now have 5 colleges at Flinders. I'm going to start at the bottom where we're safe. Science and engineering, nursing and health sciences, much of which is down at Sturt, on our Sturt precinct or our Sturt campus down the hill. Medicine and public health, an awful lot of which, of course, occurs also through FMC, or the Medical Centre. Then we have the College of Education, Psychology and Social Work, that contains education, psychology and social work, but also, due to slight changes, now has a couple of new disciplines, so we'll have a new name very shortly for those of you going there. And we also have Business, Creative Arts, Law and Social Sciences, which is the new name, and that one will stay the same for our area that has Business, Creative Arts. It's got Law, and what else has it got? Social Sciences. Clear, we know what it's got. Let's hope Education, Psychology and Social Work make a smart choice like that too. So for some of you, if those of you who are doing nursing in the room, you do basically live in the College of Nursing and Health Sciences, and you do pretty much stay there. And as we said before, nursing's doing its own thing, and that's fantastic for them. For a lot of you, you might be studying education, an education degree, so you're very much in that college, but you might be doing some topics from science as part of a major. Or you might be doing some from creative arts or social sciences. So you cross over into different colleges. What is important to know is that each college has a college office, a college front office, and that is a wonderful thing to be able to wander into and ask some questions if you need them. Young student, there's a place at the front. You sit yourself there. The other thing to be really aware of here at Flinders, a number of people in the last session popped up their hand because they had studied elsewhere. At Flinders, we often refer to your degree program. You might be doing a Bachelor of Law and Legal Practice. We call your degree your course. And then within your course, you do a bunch of topics. And these are subjects or units that make up the degree or the course. If you go to a different uni, you'll find that they often refer to topics as courses. You've got lots of courses that you do as part of your degree. Let it be known that those universities are wrong and we are right. We call a degree a course, and the subjects you do are topics, and that is how it should be. Why isn't it just called a degree? You started the other session saying, no, I'm sure I don't know anything, and now you're questioning me. Did someone teach you about critical thinking in the last session? People online, ignore any chatter in the room. It's wrong. It's just called a course. And your course, which is also your degree, has lots of topics within it. A full-time, as we mentioned in the last session, a full-time load is generally four topics, 4.5 unit topics, making up 18 units in a semester. As we touched on, there are sometimes differences here and there, nursing, but for the most part, this is how it works. Topics can come from any college, and that is where, while you might very much be an education student or a medical or med-sci student, you might still be traipsing over the lake into a science and engineering for, a biology topic, or something from social sciences, for example. Look, when it comes to choosing your topics or your enrolment, you might be becoming familiar with this language of core topics. These are the topics within a degree that you have to do. And quite often you have to do them in some sort of sequence. And then in many degrees you have the option for elective topics, so topics that you can choose. And as we touched on in the last session, in some degrees there aren't really any choices because the curriculum is very packed, and in other degrees there's an awful lot of choice. And while you might be specialising in one area with a major in whatever it might be, you might be having fun studying a little bit of screen or English Lit for enjoyment, because why would you not? The big takeaway from this is to understand your study plan. Now, this can look a bit confusing when you look at it on the student system, or you look at it in a handbook, which is not an actual book that exists, but what we call online, where you have a look at a degree or a course and the topics relating to it. Flinders Connect can absolutely help you with your study plan if you are ever unsure. If you're just not quite sure, it looks like there's a lot of choice for what to enrol in and you're not quite sure what to choose, you make sure you reach out and ask. Now, we're here in one of our lecture theatres, obviously at Flinders. It's not a particularly large one. But as you can see, it fits a lot more than you would find in a smaller classroom. So we have lectures, tutorials, closely connected tutorials, workshops, laboratories or practicals, and online activities. We'll start with lectures. They are what a lot of people picture when they think about university, sitting in a kind of a large lecture hall like this. And it is a forum to share specialist knowledge. It's me, specialist. Couldn't answer why we call it a course and not a degree. But what you'll find with a lecture theatre or having lectures, it is generally when one of your lecturers or academics, I don't want to say talks at you because they can be interactive, but it is very much sharing knowledge one way. It is very much someone talking at you for a period of time, and hopefully you getting to ask at least a couple of questions. Sometimes lectures now do look a little bit different, and they are, instead of coming to a lecture theatre, they are recorded online, hopefully in shorter chunks than 50 minutes. But I would just say a little tip with lectures in a lecture theatre like this, and I see so many of you doing it, it can feel really passive. It can feel like a really passive learning environment, and it can be hard to stay focused despite the specialist knowledge that is being delivered to you. The best thing you can do is take notes. Taking notes in a lecture, absolutely, it does help you retain the information. It does help you think about it and make those connections with that critical thinking we were talking about in the previous session. But it also, and I hate to say it, it keeps you awake. It keeps you listening. It keeps you not grabbing for your phone and beginning to scroll, which is perfectly natural when you're sort of sitting and someone's talking at you. So do really think about taking that active stance in a lecture theatre by taking some notes. Smaller classes, tutorials or workshops, they are kind of extensions of the content that you would have received in a lecture, but they are very often much more sort of discussion-based. They often the opportunity you have to discuss the content from the lecture or the readings that might be attached to the tutorial or workshop that you have. You're generally then working a little bit more closely with a tutor or a lecturer, but one that you are able to sort of engage a little bit more freely with. And it is a great place to be asking your questions, etc. Depending on the discipline, it might be less discussion-based. You might be working through practice problems or calculations or whatever it may be. But it is quite often the learning activity that students sort of cite as being the most valuable or beneficial to them. It's when you're working closely with a staff member, closely with your peers, and it is often where I think a lot of the learning is done at university. The only tip I really have for tutorials and workshops is it is a great place to ask your questions if you have them. So ask them there. Never be afraid to ask a question, because if you have it, somebody else in the room has it as well. Now, in some areas, whether it's over in the sciences, very much in health, but across the board, it can be in archaeology, can be in psychology, etc. You might have laboratories and practicals, or labs and pracs. And these are, of course, really much more hands-on activities. So this is where you might be, we can think about a lab really easily in the sciences, but you might be in a different discipline working with the type of equipment that you'd be using in your professional practice, or working through scenarios or simulations of things that would be happening in your professional practice. The big advice for these, ensure you are prepared for them. While I said in the previous session that if you run out of time, you might just have a quick look at a reading before a tutorial to make sure you know what it's about. It's crucial when you go to your labs or your pracs that you have done whatever it is you need to do beforehand. Sometimes in the sciences, it's a bit of a pre-activity and a quiz that you need to do to be able to then attend the prac, or attend the lab, I should say. But whatever it is you need to do before these really hands-on sessions, make sure you do it. This is for obvious reasons. We can make a joke about you, blowing up the university in a science lab, but we're often in labs and pracs dealing with big, expensive equipment. Might have had people who are coming in to assist with simulations, and therefore it's really crucial, of course, that everybody knows what they're doing, so stay prepared for them. And then there will be a number of online activities that you might be doing any given week. You'll find your readings that you need to do on Flow. You might have discussion forums you need to contribute to, other interactive content. And as mentioned earlier, generally for each 4.5 unit topic at Flinders, you're looking at about 10 hours of study per week. And as we talked about, that some weeks might not feel that way, and then it catches up with you the next week. So we do say on average, averaged across. Okay. You'll be shocked to discover that there are some assignments or assessment that you need to do as part of your study in your degree/course. And these are activities or items that are, of course, assessed by your tutor or your lecturer. And each of these assignments will be detailed in your modules on flow. So just quickly, who has looked at their topics on flow? Yep. Who got access to them today? Yep. And maybe some of you late last week. But yep, for a lot of you, they've become apparent today or they'll appear tomorrow. Each topic has a flow site. So you're going to your Okta dashboard, you're clicking on Flow, which is Flinders Learning Online. We call it Flow. It is, Flow refers to the kind of suite of things that come together. It all sits in a particular learning management system, which is Canvas. For some of you, it will be familiar to you from previous study that you have done. So while it is on Canvas, and you might hear people refer to Canvas, most people refer to it as Flow. This is a left side menu in your Flow topic that is going to be really important to you. You will find your content is generally there in the modules. So it can be good to click on that and you say, okay, well, I'm jumping down to module 3 because I'm in week 3 and that's how it's structured, for example. But you'll always see the assignments there, and that is a quick way to jump to them and see what you've got, when they're due, what you have to do, and how much they're worth. Just not here because it is a screenshot. The other really important thing to be aware of is this is actually also where you'll find your readings. So when people talk about doing the reading for week 1, and you're like, well, where am I going to find this reading? You'll see it there, readings, and that will open up a particular platform looked after, of course, by the library here at Flinders, and that's a really crucial spot to look as well. But you'll find your assignments here. In terms of types of assignments, there are many. We've got essays written here, but it may well be any number of different types of written responses or texts that you might need to do. So it could be an essay, could be a case study, could be an annotated bibliography, could be any number of different things. For those of you going into the sciences, you will very likely write lab reports, a very particular genre of academic writing that follows a particular structure. You may well be giving presentations, you may well do some quizzes, and some of you still might have an exam. The good news is exams are increasingly less common at university because they're not always the greatest way to allow you to demonstrate your knowledge and for us to assess that, but there are still some of them. But just on that, and this is something to really think about, assessments at Flinders are designed, as they are everywhere, to allow you to demonstrate what you have learnt. Each topic that you do at the uni will have learning outcomes, sometimes referred to as LOs, but essentially the assessment you do is designed to allow you to demonstrate the learning that your academic staff want you to have been able to do in that topic. It is really important to be transparent. Assessment can absolutely drive your learning. And what that means is there's no question if you have an assignment to do and you do it, you will often learn a lot about whatever content it is because of that piece of work. But assignments or assessment, they're not the learning process itself. Do really think about the fact that the assignments you're being asked to do are the way in which you demonstrate everything you've learned through all of those different activities I just went through. Going to the lecture, doing the readings, going to a workshop, having a lab, etc. This is where the learning happens, and you demonstrate it through the assignment that you complete. The feedback that you receive on each assignment is a big part of your learning process, and that allows you to apply it to the next assignment, to the next one, getting better and better along the way. In terms of our assignment grading scale here at Flinders, some of you might be familiar with an A, B, C structure. And you move into now a high distinction, distinction, credit, pass, and a fail. Some assignment tasks might be an NGP or a non-graded pass. And what that means is you do the assignment and you either pass or fail it. There is no number or other letter grade given. But the bulk of the assessment that you'll do at uni will involve a high distinction, credit, pass, fail. We pretty much always know what the fail is. That is under 50%. Let's move on from there. Poof, that's a negative way to look at it. Let's move on to a pass, 50 to 64, a credit, 65 to 74, and a distinction, 75 to 84. Then at the very top, we have a high distinction. Many of you will be striving to do your very, very best in all your assessment tasks. One thing to just probably bear in mind early on is that sometimes students who do come directly from school often feel like they haven't done very well when they've gotten a credit. Let me just be very clear. A pass at university means you have done exactly what was asked of you. Right? So you've passed. Everything above that means you've done more. You've read more widely, you've thought about it in a more nuanced and deeper way, you've made better connections in your writing, for example, and your writing is clear and concise and precise and all the things we want it to be at university. And that's how you move from a pass to a credit or a distinction or a high distinction. Sometimes students are like, oh my God, I've gotten 75 for this assignment. What did I do wrong? And we're like, you've just done everything right and you've gotten a distinction. That's fantastic. So try not to get too focused on the number early on as you get used to all of the conventions of doing assessment at university. Just very quickly, your grade point average or GPA, a lot of people will ask about this or you know, have this as a big question because it's a newer thing. A grade point average, it is the average of the grades that you get during your studies. After the end of your first semester here at Flinders, you will have, if you've done, say, a full-time load, you've got 4 results, you will have a GPA. It is a score out of 7. And it comes from the range of essentially letter grades that you received. If you get 4 high distinctions, your GPA would be 7. If you got 2 credits and 2 distinctions, it might be 5.5. It isn't something, it's something that students often ask about when they start and then they never think about again the whole time that they're at uni because they realise it's not actually that relevant to them. But it is